Hello, all, and welcome to Ripple Out Conversation. My name is Neve McQuillan, and today we have a really special guest. I'm so excited. We have Gloria Feldt today with us, and Gloria was CEO of Planned Parenthood for 9 years, the National Planned Parenthood, after a very long career in Planned Parenthood. Gloria is now the co-founder and president of Take the Lead. And Take the Lead is their goal, their mission is to achieve leadership gender parity by 2025, which is pretty amazing. That's 70 to 150 years faster than expected. And that is a bold and audacious goal. So welcome today, Gloria. It's wonderful to be able to sit down and chat with you today.
Thank you, Neve. I'm excited to get to talk with you.
So I first met Gloria. I first saw you at the WOW conference in 2015 at the Notre Dame of Maryland University. And you were talking about a book you had just written, No Excuses, 9 Leadership Power Tools for Women. And it blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's thinking about the exact same stuff that I'm thinking about. And it gave me validity. And then this summer, I was able to take your course, 9 Leadership Power Tools. So I'm just delighted that, to be able to be part of your work and understand your thinking. And so the reason I'm asking here today is because I want to ask you that question. One of my favorite questions to ask women is like, how do you know what there was for you to do in your life? How did you find your pathway? And I've heard your life story a number of times and I find it riveting. So I'm going to turn that question over to you. How did you know what there was to do in your life, Gloria?
It's always a path. It's never a straight path. I think it's always, there are a few people who are fortunate enough to know at a very early age exactly what they want to do, exactly what they want to be, and they stick with that. But I was not one of those. I started out in life growing up in small Texas towns in a culture where women were basically not encouraged to have careers other than being wife and mother and support systems to everybody else. And if you had a career, you were supposed to be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. And I actually do love teaching, and my goal in life, I thought at the time, was to be a teacher. And I had married my high school sweetheart when I was very young. We had 3 kids by the time I was 20. And, actually my children and I look back on this and go, how did we do it? We don't know. We don't know how we did this, but we gave it a good try. We did our best. And, but as most people do, you grow, you continue to grow. And I think your 20s and early 30s are really major growth periods for many people. And there was a moment where I knew that it was time to move on, but I was stuck. I was just stuck. And I hadn't really started a career. I was just doing substitute teaching, and I actually had taught at Head Start. And I was planning to, it took me 12 years to finish my degree because I didn't start until I had the 3 children. So I was very slowly getting my teaching credentials, planning to be a high school social studies teacher. And that was what was on my mind. So I'm going to reveal up front this time that it was a dream, but usually when I tell the story, I like to put a little tension because it's one of those things that I think we all experience sometimes. So I was driving the family car, a white Chevrolet Impala. I can see it in front of me, down one of those winding, dusty West Texas roads. And with a lot of hairpin turns. It was getting dark, and I don't know where I thought I was headed, but I did at one point try to slow the car down. And it turns out that the accelerator was stuck. And I tried to slow down. I tried to pump the brakes. The brakes were not responding. And so I was thinking to myself, what could I do? I'm going to go faster and faster and faster. My heart was beating. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to crash. I'm going to do something in, and nobody will be there to take care of my kids. So I thought to myself, if I turned off the accelerator, the car would have to roll to a stop. Now, that was in the days when you had actual keys. Remember when you had keys to start your car? And so I looked to do that, and there was no key in the accelerator. I'm like, what's that about? In that moment when you're dreaming and it feels like it's an hour, but it's probably a split second,
Mhm.
I looked at my hand and I saw the keys were right there in my hands. And it still took me another split second that felt like an hour to pick up my hand, take the key, put it in the accelerator, turn put it in the key accelerator place, and turn the car off. At that point, the car rolled to a stop. I was able to get out safely and walk away. And it didn't take a psychiatrist
Mhm.
to tell me what that dream meant, because I knew in my heart it was time to move on. But what I realized in that moment was that I had never, ever in my life made a decision based on my own intention
Mhm.
about what I wanted to do and what really fit me and my skills and the gifts I bring and my personality. And that I had been covering, the term for when you're in a situation where you feel like you don't really belong. So you try to adopt the behaviors of the predominant culture.
Yes,
And I
yes.
think a lot of women today feel that way in institutional structures built by men for men 200 or 300 years ago, when life was very different. And yet women are now half of the workforce. And so it doesn't feel quite right. And I think that's why a lot of women leave the workforce right when they could be really expanding their career.
Mhm.
So that's when I knew I had to move on from there. What I had been doing as I was having these part-time jobs and going to school was that I had begun to get involved in the civil rights movement. And I learned two really important things. One was that I saw the women were doing most of the actual frontline work, and the men were getting the leadership roles and getting all the credit.
Mhm.
And so I I thought to myself at that time, if there are civil rights, well, then women must have them too. Why, why shouldn't those incredible women be getting credit for what they're doing? The other thing I learned, which is really what has guided my life in social justice movements ever since, is I learned that people working together, even if they have very little formal power, can make big change.
Mhm.
And they can make change for justice. They can make change for, to make life better, for more just for their kids, the next generation, as well as themselves. So I really credit the civil rights movement with defining what I ultimately realized I needed to do with my life. And I have focused on women, but I will have to say that one of the things I always share with people is that racism and sexism are joined at the head.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's really an unbroken thread. And when I talk about gender parity, I'm talking about for all women. And with Take the Lead, we really have a commitment to having in our 50 Women Can Change the World cohorts, 50% women of color. Our board, our team, we try to make sure that we have representation across the board of what our country really looks like. So, because I really feel that all women will succeed together or will fail together.
Mhm. So I'm curious about you found your way into working with Planned Parenthood. You were with them for 30 years. You retired, and you could have sat back and said, you know what, I've done some great things and I've had a wonderful work experience, but you didn't. So how did you pivot then to doing the work you're doing now, going from Planned Parenthood to Take the Lead? What did you understand or know that had you make that change?
I have this weird bifurcated personality. There are two things I like best are being on, like being on that public stage, like I was with Planned Parenthood very often, and being behind my computer by myself writing. I love to write. And I really gave myself some time, a couple of years, to do a lot of writing, books and articles and so forth. The last book I wrote, though, was an exploration of why women hadn't reached parity in leadership, even though we had opened doors and changed laws. And the doors were open. And in fact, at that point, when I wrote No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, women had been earning about 57% of the college degrees for 2 decades. So we were well prepared. We were pushing on to half of the workforce, but we just were at under 20% of the top leadership positions. I couldn't figure this out. What was wrong? Well, we all grow up in the same culture. We inhabit the same implicit biases, and we are acculturated not even to see ourselves necessarily in those kinds of roles unless we are specifically shown and told that we can be that. So we don't really have the role models. We don't really have the encouragement. I discovered that women are socialized very differently around power and intention than men are. And even today, it's better with every generation. That's the good news. But even today, girls are still socialized first to think about what other people think about them. And so your body gets objectified. Your thinking starts with putting your power outside of yourself. Like, what does Neve think about me? Not what do I think about myself, but, what do these other folks think about me? And what do I need to do to please them? So once I realized that the research that tended to say women had less ambition than men, and that was why they were not in the leadership roles, did not hold water. And it was about this differential socialization, and that I needed to do something to help women have a different relationship with power, to be able to see that power itself is just energy. It doesn't have any characteristics of its own. So there's no reason to be ambivalent about it. It's what you do with it. It's like a hammer. You can build something or you can break something with a hammer. What do you want to do with it? And as soon as I could help women move their thinking about power from an oppressive idea of power over them to a generative idea of the power to make life better for their kids, their family, the community, the world, their company, I would see like masks fall off of women's faces. And they would say, well, yeah, I want that kind of power. And so from there, I wrote this book and I was just going to be another one of the books. I did not plan on starting Take the Lead. I can guarantee you that. But people started asking me to do workshops, teaching it, because other people recognized it as a leadership book.
Yeah. And
so I started doing these workshops, and I saw women have really transformational change. And, pretty soon, being a movement builder, I got hooked and got persuaded that I could teach a bunch of little workshops myself, but if I really wanted to make a change, we had to have an organization. So here we are. Take the Lead is now 7 years old. And we have now developed our programming from that one little workshop that I created from the book. We've now developed the online course that you took. We've developed a very immersive 3-month-long program called 50 Women Can Change the World that we do by different sectors. And we do online, in-person, blended. We do training for companies. We're also expanding it into more generalized diversity and inclusion, so that the gender piece gets well integrated into the overall diversity and inclusion work that companies are doing now. So it's gotten to be kind of a grown-up organization.
Yeah, it really has. Well, Gloria, thank you so much for your time with this topic today. What I can hear at every single step as an educator myself, the teacher and educator in you who has insights and understandings and just feels compelled to bring them to other people. And you have done that with me every single time I've met you. And I hope to be able to bring that to all the people who watch this conversation today. So thank you so much, Gloria.
Well, I thank you, Neve, and you have brought as much to me. And if I may just tell people to go to taketheleadwomen.com if they'd like to know more, that would be great.
Please do. And I'll make sure that I put that link in when I post this on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.